So Giles is red, State is blue, the district is yellow, and then Lee is green. So you can kind of see the chart a little easier looking back.
This is an overall average of all of the grade levels together for the composite ELA and math. And we are exactly tied in ELA.
Yep, they're both the same, 55.7 in ELA between Giles and Lee, which is great.
And completely overall, Lee was just slightly behind Giles for last school year.
In math.
In math.
Still pretty similar.
And the number of kids was very different, right?
I think that Lee was about 490, and I think we were about 620 at Giles last year.
Right.
So this now breaks it down into grade, and starts at 3rd grade, ends down there at 8th grade. Same colors involved with the blue is State, yellow being Norwich, District 80, and then red is Giles and green is Lee. So you see some up and downs.
You know, the variations in the grades, yeah. There's several grades where it's very similar, 7th and 8th grade, for example, at both schools, but then there are a couple of grades where there are large disparities. For example, Giles' 4th grade was 20 points lower in ELA, whereas Lee's 6th grade was 20 points lower in ELA.
And as Dr. O'Malley actually explained very nicely, Park is looking at growth. But when we look at growth, you know, you're looking at one year to another. If we did have Park in the fall and Park in the spring, you know, we would be able to look at that growth differently than looking at it in a year from a year. Something like math, which you'll hear about in a little bit, we look at the fall, the winter, and the spring to look at the growth. Park is just one time a year, so it's a little different. But we do look at these type of areas to, so you changed them. Well, still this is math. To look at, do we need to look at something different with the curriculum? Do we need to look at what areas are our challenges? Looking at math, sorry, I cut you off like that.
No, that's okay. Yeah, what we do is we look at cohorts of students because like we were talking about earlier, our enrollment is fairly stable. So you want to compare year over year. So when you have a situation that we see in our 4th grade data where it's very disparate, where Giles' 4th graders were quite a bit lower this past year, we want to take a look at that cohort of Giles' 4th graders and see how they do, of course. How did they do when they were in 3rd grade? And now how are they going to do in 5th grade? And what can we do right now as my 5th graders? I'm taking a look at this data over the summer, for example. We get some sneak peeks at this data, and we said, what can we do to address these challenges that we're seeing in our 5th graders? So some of the decisions that we made in the scheduling committee, some of the decisions we made with curriculum, we're doing the new Envisions math program for our 5th graders and our math reinforcement that both address some of the concerns that were highlighted in these data.
So in the same point, looking at the sneak peek over the summer, I have to look at it as what's going on in 4th grade. What do we need to look at for these 3rd graders that are now coming into 4th grade? Because what you don't see here is the Lee 4th grade, while it was at 50, actually dropped a lot from 3rd grade to 4th grade. Almost the same amount.
The cohort
of kids actually dropped. So we have to look at why did that drop happen? Where are areas of challenge so that we can work on the curriculum in 4th grade to see what we need to do, and then we can work with the kids in 5th grade to see how we can work on those skills. And it's actually very interesting, so we've broken it down a little further.
Some of the comparisons that we use to monitor our state report card include looking at how our low-income students do. And as you saw, it was hovering just under 30% of our students are classified as low income. And I have to say, this is a very a proud thing I took a look at. I thought, wow, we do double the number of percent of our kids that meet or exceed state standards who are classified as low income as the state. This is a hard number to move, and we do really, really well with our low income kids comparatively, especially to other districts. Our students are learning well when they come to Norwich schools, when they have challenges in their home life.
I'm sorry, if I'm reading this correctly, the low-income students are doing much better than non-low-income students.
Not necessarily. Remember, this is the complete average, right?
Right. Hey, you're looking at, isn't our average 47 total? Roughly 47 and a half, so you're looking at
Yeah, some grades, absolutely. Our low-income students are doing better.
phenomenal.
It is, yeah. This is a big win, actually. Some districts take a look at these data in order to determine whether or not there is educational impact for students who have economic challenges. And I would say that's not the case here.
These are the math scores, the same as the ELA. Again, looking at the state averages.
Yeah. Again, a good number of our students are doing well. All right, is this still us? Yeah.
So looking at our balanced assessment model, which the next slide is actually going to give you a nice little picture of that, is what we do is we start in the fall, winter, and spring, as I mentioned, with MAP scores. And we take the MAP scores, we share them with parents at conferences, we look at the fall MAP scores, and we work with the children on where their growth is. And we have those conversations with them. We work on the curriculum, we see what areas that we need to work on. We're actually, MAP is able to break things down for us standard by standard. So we're able to then focus on what standards the students need. We then assess again in winter, go through the same process, and then again in spring.
What this does is it formatively assesses how we're doing, so that before we get to that PARC test in the spring, we're already monitoring whether or not we're having a school effect or an impact on the students.
Math is taken in all of first grade through 8th grade. It assesses the growth in reading and math. Math is a, what's the word? It's the kind of test that you go in and take, and if you get that one correct, it's adaptive. And then it'll give you something a little harder. And then if you get that one correct, it'll give you something a little harder. If you struggle on something, it'll pull back a little bit. So it's for every kid that's taking that test, it's going to be a different experience. And they're going to come out with a different, what's called a RID score. We are then able to take that RID score and work with them on reading levels of that RID score. And in a couple of different things, like Achieve 3000 that we've talked about a few times, Kid Biz down in 3rd grade for us. We've used News ELA, we use Reading Works, so we take that RID score, and let's say we're working on something like, I always come up with like a weather thing for some reason. Volcanoes.
Yeah, I always use volcanoes.
And then we are able to meet the RID score of the student where their reading level is, where their independent reading level is, with different passages. So we can be all learning about volcanoes, yet the RID score that you're reading or that Principal Palmer's reading might be different, and it's at the RID score of the students.
This speaks to the district goal of individualizing student instruction. So recently we gave out at conferences your child's MAP test scores. This had a RID score on it. A reading RID is an important thing for you to understand and know, because first of all, it's a great thing to know when you're going to pick out an independent reading book at the library, but it's also something to take a look at and see growth over time in some of these programs. The MAP RID we use at the middle school to feed into the Khan Academy program that we use in math reinforcement that individualizes skill deficit strengthening, and again, trying to impact that score over time and seeing growth, because it's 3 times a year we're able to monitor it much more. Then of course we should see that impact on PARC. PARC is more aligned with NAEP, or the National Assessment of Educational Progress, whereas MAP is aligned with SAT. And any of those is a predictor of SAT college readiness. So any of you that have students at the high school know that that is the ultimate goal, is to get that good SAT score junior year, because that of course helps you get into college. So we're looking at MAP. Also 8th graders this year before winter break will be taking MAP for their high school placement to help place them into classes. Ainsworth is another beast, however.
Well, one last thing about MAP.
Oh.
We also do have the students predict their own growth on MAP. So they
Yes,
sit down
they
and
set
have a
goals.
conversation and set
Yes.
goals which is very powerful. I mean, even the first graders are sitting down and making some goals on where they want to go in the math. Ames Web is also given 3 times a year at K4 for everyone, and then just targeted students at Giles in 5 through 8. Ames Web is another type of assessment like MAP. It's not adaptive in that same way that MAP is, but it does give us some good data, and Ames Web allows us to be able to progress monitor kids on a more frequent level so that we can see that growth a little quicker. And Mrs. Rubel, who is our instructional coordinator, is going to speak a little bit about Ames Web in a moment. It assesses proficiency in math and reading, growth over time, and it allows us to be able to progress monitor the kids. So we can have students that are receiving interventions, and say you're receiving an intervention on fluency, you could do more frequent than just having it in the fall, winter, and spring to keep checking on that fluency to see if we have some growth. Is the program that we're using working? Do we need to change that? And then we have what I call data days here at Lee School every 6 to 8 weeks to look at that data and see if everything's going great. We're like, great, everything's good, everything is moving forward, or if we need to change something over time. All right. So Mrs. Rubel.
To kind of go off of what Ms. Kuzik was just talking about is we collect all of this data and then we need to figure out what to do with it and what we can do to best make our students move forward and grow as much as they can. So this is a sample of what we might look at in a specific day-to-day. So I know it's really small, but like we would have columns with their fall reading percentile in Ames Web. Ames Web also assigns a risk status, so how much at risk a certain student is based off of that score for reading difficulty. And then we have, next to that, a math percentile for fall, a Lexile level. A Lexile is just a different kind of reading level, so if you go over to the library, you can look, and you get this on your map. So I know my kid is 303 to 453. I can find a book that fits them in that range. Then in the next column, we had what maybe a student was currently doing during their reading or math intervention time, and then next steps. And then we have the same information for math. We have their Ames Web math, their risk status, their fall math percentile, and then what they were doing and what they'll continue to do. The reason why we look at data like this and in this format is so that we can kind of see, where our students are struggling and what we can do best to meet their needs. For example, the student scored, fairly low on the fall Ames Web assessment. The risk status was high, so we put them at the start of the year in a pretty hefty intervention. That particular student, we monitor progress over time. After the 6-week period of time in the intervention, the progress wasn't there, so they got switched to a different intervention. What's really nice about looking data holistically like this is that the classroom teachers and all of us who come together on our day-to-days can make decisions for our struggling students, for our on-level students, for our advanced students. Just the other day, I was at a 3rd grade meeting, and we were sharing kids in one of our computer programs to personalize their learning. So we had students who specifically were going to be working on vocabulary, whether that was going to be vocabulary right at their grade level or above level. And then we had the same conversation. We were talking about how we can differentiate from math. And especially maybe some of our higher performing students who could do work on the same math standard that the whole class is working on, but then in their additional math time when they break for intervention, those students could work on that standard in the computer program at a whole grade level above. So we're really making a lot of really great database decisions for our students on how to move them forward. So this is another way we can look at data for our students, and this is just a peek at a 5th grade math for math. So we're able to see how many of our students fall between math's different categories of performance. So the math assessment categorizes students in 5 categories. Low, which would be anything under the 21st percentile. Low average, which would be the 21st to 40th percentile.